What are some other things people get wrong when they start on testosterone or get started on testosterone?
Well, I think that there are still some fears. Some patients still think that they may get prostate cancer. There's no concern for prostate cancer now. AUA guidelines 2018, patients should be informed that there is no increased risk with testosterone increasing prostate cancer, and that was a strong recommendation, 2018. So it doesn't increase prostate cancer. There's another myth. If you open the package insert, it still today says that if you take testosterone, it can make your urinary symptoms worse. And that is not true.
Right.
And in fact, even in the Traverse trial, we gave every single one of those men an IPSS questionnaire, a voiding questionnaire. And it showed that there was no significant worsening of urinary symptoms in those men taking testosterone over a placebo. In fact, there's not a single study that really suggests that giving testosterone makes urination worse, but there are some studies suggesting that long-term testosterone may improve urinary symptoms. So again, we should just be cognizant of the misconceptions of T, And then in terms of benefits, as many people don't realize that testosterone can actually improve your quality of life, like particularly diabetes, obesity, right? Bone mineral density, depression. We don't talk about depression. It's so important. I mean, you and I work at the VA, right? So I can't tell you how many veterans I see that come in with a diagnosis of depression or PTSD that have never had their testosterone level checked. And I'm not saying that we're going to treat major depressive disorder with testosterone, but I am saying that you should at least check it, because I'll give you an example. So in 2011, we had this big study. It was almost 850 men, and they had low testosterone, and we gave them the PHQ-9 questionnaire to look for depression. We found that 92% of men had some degree of depression, 92%. 17% had severe depression. We treated these men for 1 year, and severe depression went down from 17% down to 2%. And if they were already on an antidepressant, those patients also saw improvements in depressive symptoms as well, suggesting maybe some synergy.
Yeah.
So again, I'm not suggesting to treat depression with a testosterone, but it does help.
Yeah.
So if you have a man who suffers from depression, check the testosterone level.
Yeah.
That's the least you could do.
Yeah, and the other thing I will see in a lot of patients is this improvement in brain fog.
Yeah.
And I think it's hard. I think there are questionnaires that look at brain fog.
Yeah.
Or there's a question in the ADAM questionnaire, asking about brain fog. But ultimately, I think that's, there are androgen receptors in the brain.
Yes.
It's not fully elucidated with the risk of dementia or other things, but it may come out that there is a benefit in that regard too.
I think so. I think it's an improvement in cognition. Now let's flip it for a second. Now let's flip it and say a man comes into you with low energy, low libido, depression, and you put him on testosterone replacement therapy. And you raise his level from 200 to 800. And he says, I still have all those symptoms. What's the next move? Screen him for depression.
Yeah.
It's the same symptoms.
Right.
Depression and hypogonadism share so many of the same, even weight gain, they all share there's a lot of the same symptoms.
Yeah.
So we're so fixated, urologists, they're like, okay, it's got to be T, right? And the psychiatrists are, it's got to be depression. So, as we fault them for not checking the T, we should fault us for not screening for depression.
Absolutely.
Right? Same way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's really a great point. We have to look at the whole individual, and I think that's really important. I think for anyone listening, if you're struggling with these symptoms, you may really be banking on that testosterone to help you. And if it doesn't, it's not that the testosterone's not working if the numbers are showing you what they're showing you. It's that there may be something else that we need to dig deeper.
Right.
Yeah.
And it could have the other hormones. So the other mimicker is thyroid. Hypothyroid.
I check thyroid on everybody.
Yeah, because same symptoms, right? So everyone says it's got to be my testosterone. I say, no, we got to look for all the other variables.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. In terms of, you've mentioned that there's not any other hormone test, any other blood test that we can do that gives us such a beautiful view right into a man's health. So do you think there's a role for having a routine testosterone screening, or at least one at a younger age?
I think every man over the age of 40 should have an annual testosterone level checked. If every man who goes in for a physical every year gets their thyroid checked as part of a physical, the yield is so low, it's less than 10% at best. The testosterone is a much better indicator of your overall health as opposed to
and probably a higher yield.
A much higher yield.
Yeah.
And many people will argue that sometimes the symptoms are because of the delta. If you started out at 800 and today you're at 350, you probably or could feel less than someone who started out at 600 and today is at 350. The delta may be an issue. So I don't know your delta if I never checked a baseline.
Yeah.
Right? I don't know your delta. Right? So it's very important to check these T levels every year in every man over the age of 40. Now, you said something very important, this is a marker. And you and I do a lot of men's health. That's what we do. And testosterone, I think we both agree, is probably the best indicator of a man's overall health. But there are two other indicators that are fantastic. One, a semen analysis. I can tell you so much about a man's health with just a semen analysis. And the second is erectile dysfunction.
Yes.
A man walks in with ED, I can tell you a lot about his cardiovascular, diabetes, depression. So when what we do, the three markers are testosterone, semen analysis, and a diagnosis of ED, I can tell you so much about what is happening today and what's going to happen
if you do nothing.
If you do nothing.
Right.
And that's really important.
Yeah. So important. And I think that's why, I mean, this part of the reason I do what I do is because what we do, people think it's no big deal. Like it's just sex, right? But what we do, sexual health is health, right? It's health. We are looking for issues that can undercover so many. I see so many really healthy looking guys.
Yeah.
They come in, they're very physically fit. They are high performers in their job, and they have low testosterone and they have high cholesterol, and they didn't know they had high cholesterol until they came in and saw me and we checked their cholesterol, because they don't even need to see a PCP. They think they don't need to see a PCP, right? And they don't get any blood work done. They're like, I'm fine, I'm healthy. They finally come in because guess what? Now their erections are a little less robust and they're not consistent. And so that's what brings men to the doctor. And this is an opportunity, right?
Yes.
And I think for all primary care doctors and doctors who aren't specialized in sexual medicine, that's an opportunity.
Yes. So you are so correct. I say this all the time. Sexual health is the gateway to a man's overall health, particularly for young men. So if you look at men between the ages of 18 and 40, less than 45% of those men go in for a routine exam. So I can think of myself, when I was 30, I wasn't going to go check my blood pressure annually. I wasn't going to get a hemoglobin A1C. You're 30, you kind of do your thing, right? But if a man develops ED, he's in my office tomorrow morning, first thing, right? Now the question is, do I have an opportunity? Do I have an opportunity to diagnose diabetes, cardiovascular disease? Because if I diagnose it today, as opposed to when it would have been diagnosed when he was 40, we call that area under the curve, 10 years or less damage. And that could change the trajectory of his life, right? You absolutely could. And the mistake, this is the mistake that a lot of people make, is handing him the Viagra and saying goodbye.
Right.
That's the mistake,
yes.
right? That's the lost opportunity, right? So it is absolutely crucial that when a man walks in with ED to screen for at least two things, cardiovascular and diabetes. Big study out of St. Louis, almost 2 million patients they looked at coming in for ED. 30% of those young men, 18 to 40, had prediabetes or diabetes on the day they were diagnosed with ED. 30%. That's a big deal. I mean, that's you can find it right away. And, cardiovascular disease, the data just as well as I do. 15% of men in 7 years will have a heart attack or stroke from the onset of getting ED. So there is an opportunity to do this. I want to give you a really good study that really impacted me. There was a study that came out of Greece, and they looked at these men, and they had ED, and they came into the clinic, and they did a stress test or an echo. If it was positive, they would do an angiogram. And there was just 50 men who walked in randomly for ED. And they ended up doing the angiogram, and 20% of the men had either 1 vessel, 2 vessel, or 3 vessel occlusion on angiogram, right? So I thought to myself, that's kind of significant. 1 out of 5 guys that I see in my clinic actually have occult cardiovascular disease with some occlusion in the heart. And wouldn't this be the opportunity to change the course, right? That's very important.
Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, I think it's a big motivator for people. If I say, hey, you might get heart disease, so you should work out. People are like, okay, I'll get to it. But if I'm like, hey, if you start, and this is your study, if you start exercising 150 minutes a week, you're going to see improvement in your erectile function as good as taking a Viagra. Like, that is a huge motivator for people.
Huge motivator. And reversal of erectile dysfunction. So what you just said was so important. Think about this. If you broke your leg today, I have 2 options. I can fix your leg, or I can give you Vicodin. Because if I give you Vicodin, you'll still be able to walk. Right, but eventually the Vicodin will stop working, and you'll have to do something about it. The way we treat sexual dysfunction today is Vicodin. That's what we do. We come in, Viagra is just Vicodin, right? It's just, I give you the Viagra, and as time goes on, you go into injections. As time goes on, you go to a penile implant, right? Viagra is just Vicodin. But what you just talked about was exercise, lifestyle modification. That actually reverses erectile dysfunction. And that to me is far more powerful. That's fixing your leg, right?
Yes. And I think the important thing also that you pointed out, Viagra is going to stop working, not because the medication stops working, but because you get sicker.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I say that because the disease progressed and now the Viagra can no longer hold the fort. That's what I tell them, right? It's not because of Viagra you became resistant to Viagra.
Yes, which is what a lot of people think. Like, it's just going to stop working.
Yeah, it's not resistant. Your body became worse. So that's why one of my favorite drugs is actually daily Cialis. I think daily Cialis, FDA approved to help with erectile function, FDA approved for BPH, FDA approved for pulmonary hypertension, and it protects the endothelium, the lining of the blood vessels. Cloner last year published a paper showing 13% reduction in MI in those men taking daily Cialis versus not, which is a big deal. So I tell a patient, okay, your heart, your penis, and your prostate all benefit from one pill, and it's cheap now. You can get it cheap. Yeah. Why wouldn't you? And there's side effects, so we can you talk about those, and you don't want to take it with nitrates. But again, the benefits are really significant, particularly on prevention. I tell if you take this today, if you were going to get ED at 65, you may now get it at 70. I can shift the curve because I'm keeping the tissue healthier longer by the daily PD5 inhibitor.
Yeah, I love it. I think it should be in the water. I joke, and I can already hear the comments being like, oh, you guys are paid off by Big Pharma. We are not. And number one, these medications go through rigorous clinical trials. And I think that's the difference. People are very willing to take a supplement that has very minimal data, no data, and is not regulated. And when people pour millions of dollars into studying medications to make sure they're safe, they're efficacious, they do what they're going to say they're going to do, and they compare them to a sugar pill or a placebo, that is why doctors like to talk about these medications, because they work and they're safe. And we can say that with confidence. And so I just want to put that out there because I think it's great and I think it works really well. And I think if you are starting to notice any detriment in your erections, I think there's a real long-term benefit, as you mentioned.
I agree 100%.
Yeah. You mentioned semen analysis, and I want to talk about that. Why is a semen analysis a good barometer of overall health?
Yeah, so semen analysis is important for two things. I want you to think about what's happening today and what's going to happen in the future. Like, let's divide it up. So semen analysis today, there was a really nice study by Androni Salonia who showed that men who have lower semen analyses, worse semen analysis, tend to be more unhealthy. That's true. Healthier people are more fertile, period. Darwinism, survival of the fittest, right? So you pass on the genes. So healthier people are more fertile. If there's a decline in your semen analysis, many times it's been shown that you're more unhealthy. One of the biggest culprits is obesity. As you become healthier, semen analyses should improve. That's number one. Number two is what's going to happen in the future. So a good friend, your friend too, Mike Eisenberg, had a wonderful study on semen analyses and basically showed that if you have a decreased semen analysis today, you're more likely to have ischemic heart disease, diabetes, alcohol abuse, drug abuse in the future, right? I think ischemic heart disease was up to 50%. I think diabetes was 30%. So if I told you, hey, your semen analysis today is poor, you have a 50% more likelihood of having ischemic heart disease in the future. Semen analysis today, I know you're only 30 years old, is poor, 30% more likely to have diabetes, and more likely to suffer from drug abuse and alcohol abuse in the future. So this is what's coming in the future. I would take that very seriously. So what's going to happen in the future? Now, let's even flip it even more. Let's talk about cancers, okay? So many studies showed that if you have a poor semen analysis today, much more likely to have testis cancer. Jay Rahman study, right? Significantly higher number of testis cancer today. And what's going to happen in the future? Tom Walsh, 2.6 times more likely in the future to have high-grade prostate cancer, right? So wait a minute, I have a poor semen analysis today, 2.6 times more likely to have a high-grade prostate cancer in the future. I'm going to pay attention to my PSA and my prostate, right? So it's a great window into what's happening today and what can happen in the future. And what's nice is it's modifiable, which means that if I improve my health, my semen parameters should improve as well, right?
And now getting a semen analysis is easier than ever.
Yes.
Right? There's these at-home kits. I mean, they weren't around when I was in training, but they are here now, and they're really, really helpful.
Yes, they are.
They make it more comfortable, I think, for the patient.
I agree.
Why drug abuse and alcohol abuse? Why would having was there a hypothesis as to why that happened?
I did not see the hypothesis. It was just listed as the 4 main things that would occur in the future.
Interesting.
He followed this. It was a database.
Yeah.
And he followed these patients and he found higher rates of ischemic heart disease, diabetes, alcohol abuse, and drug abuse. I don't know about why the drug abuse and alcohol abuse.
Maybe there's some mental aspect to...
Yeah, or fertility, having some kind of depression or anxiety.
Yeah,
because we do know that patients who are infertile can have more higher incidence of depression and anxiety due to the infertility.
If you liked that clip from the Rena Malik MD podcast, make sure to check out the full clip right here.